Hey everybody, JCB here at the Awesomist, and you're watching the Awesomist Reviews. So I just watched Fear the Walking Dead, and it's kinda terrible. I watched all of last season, and while we're only a few episodes into season 2, I already have a strong feeling this season is not gonna be any better. Which is a real shame, because in theory, this sounds like a great idea for a show. A spin-off of one of the most successful shows on television, Fear the Walking Dead has the freedom to do whatever it wants with its story, because it isn't tied to any comic book or previous source material. This is not to say that the original Walking Dead bothers to follow all that closely to its source material, but it at least respects the story of the comics when it needs to, while veering away when it can. And in many instances, veering away has brought us some pretty great moments. I mean, if you don't count staying so long at that fucking farm. My point is, the show's creators and writers are clearly creative enough to come up with new and interesting stories completely independent from the comic, which should translate into a pretty fun show, and they're free to do that all the time. Another downside of being tied even loosely to the comics is that if you're at all familiar with the source material, you can see major story elements coming from a mile away. And even if you don't follow the comics, somebody you know probably does, and they're going to tell you about the stuff that's coming soon. But even if you don't follow the comics, and you don't have any friends, Chris Hardwick of The Talking Dead is totally willing to be that friend. Anybody's friend. Somebody please be friends with Chris Hardwick. So the freedom to explore the zombie apocalypse freed of any source material sounds like a great idea. Even fans of the comic books could enjoy that show because nobody would have any idea about what's coming next. Another strong point for the show in theory is that it takes place on the other side of the country, in one of the most densely populated cities in the world. On top of that, we get to see the beginnings of the apocalypse, something we've only gotten peeks at and secondhand accounts of due to the fact that we experienced it the same way Rick did, which is to say not at all. So we get a new series completely untied to the plot of the comics, based in a far more dangerous, more populated area at the very start of the zombie apocalypse. That all sounds fantastic. What could possibly go wrong? Apparently a whole fucking lot. For starters, all of the characters are unlikable. The two leads are incredibly wishy-washy. It would be fine if one of them was indecisive and the other was strong. The two could contrast with each other, question and undermine and hinder each other's decisions. And as a married couple, this could be a great way to explore their relationship dynamic. How do they handle disagreements? Who really wears the pants in the family? We could explore what it means to try and hold a marriage together in a world that's falling apart. Also, the viewers would be able to relate to both characters equally in different ways, with one representing the type of person they would like to be in this situation, and the other reminding them of the type of person they would more realistically resemble. Instead, both characters are bumbling idiots who have moments of do-or-die efficiency. When you see that a character is capable of making a tough choice, but then reverts back to an indecisive buffoon the very next time they're faced with a tough choice, it really makes me root for the zombies. So let's take a look at our cast of characters. First we have Travis, the stepdad who has about as much spine as you'd expect from a fairly well-off suburban dad character on TV. I guess we're lucky he's not the goofy sitcom caricature of a dad we're so used to seeing on television. Then we have his wife, Blondie. I'm not really sure what her name is and I don't care. I keep wanting to call her Andrea, but she's not quite that annoying. She has the bigger balls of the two and more often seems willing to do whatever it takes, unless suddenly for no reason she isn't. Really, all of the characters on this show make dumb decisions, which is magnified by the fact that we as an audience know the rules of this universe, which has now existed for almost 7 years. This phenomenon is known as dramatic irony, and in short it basically means the audience knows more about the situation than the characters do. You would think the show's creators would be mindful of this dynamic, as it's always a delicate balancing act when dealing with dramatic irony in a story. Make the characters too lucky or adaptive, and there's no tension. Make the characters too stupid, and it's frustrating. Although ironically, the one genre dramatic irony typically works great in is horror. As a member of the audience, knowing the killer is right outside the shower as the character on screen ambiguously goes about their day is a great use of dramatic irony. You feel bad for the unsuspecting character. You know the horrible threat lurking nearby, and part of you wants to warn them. The characters in Fear the Walking Dead are more like the idiots in horror movies who know there's a killer in the house but go to investigate. At least those characters tend to die though. We're stuck with these idiots. When characters act in a way the audience never would, it makes it really hard to relate or even like them. And typically the audience will applaud when one of these types of characters dies in a horror movie, which leaves us all hoping these characters die on the show. Could you imagine that dynamic on The Walking Dead? Carl doesn't count. And there's no reason for this to be an issue. Fear the Walking Dead exists in a universe that has predetermined rules, so why not teach them the rules? It would only take a few episodes. Then the drama could unfold from the situations they're in, and not from the fact that they're all idiots. After a few encounters, every single one of us would be ready, or at least we'd like to believe we'd be ready to do whatever it takes to survive. This was true when we first watched the original Walking Dead, back before anybody even knew the way this world works. Nobody identified with Lori. Nobody looked at that hot mess and thought to themselves, yep, that's me if the zombies come. I'm gonna ignore my kid and make dumb choices. No, we all saw ourselves as Rick or Daryl or even Shane. We've had almost 7 years of hypothetical zombie situations to to think about, which means the creators of Fear the Walking Dead have to tread even more carefully when trying to find that balance with the audience. Instead, our characters stumble through this world like total idiots, unaware of how stupid they are. Perhaps worst of all, these characters appear to have never had a difficult day in their life, which makes their survival in this world even more unlikely, and their characters less likable. Why should I root for them? I want to see an underdog survive. One of the reasons Daryl Dixon is a fan favorite is because he's one of those people who couldn't make it in the pre-apocalypse. He was dirt poor, uneducated, stuck in the backwoods of Georgia making moonshine and ripping people off. Yet as soon as the material world fell apart, his survival skills were in demand, and as a result, he thrived and grew. Most of these characters had it rough, but grew and overcame themselves in a world where everything is dying. And you might say, well, Nick is a good example of one of those kind of characters, and I will admit he is the closest thing the show has to a compelling character, but there is a difference. First off, while Daryl did some shady shit and his brother Merle was definitely a druggie, they at least handled that shit themselves. They didn't want help, they didn't ask for help. Wait a minute. Pretty clever, AMC. Anyway, Nick is a heroin addict who is completely dependent on his parents for both his horrible habit and the consequences of that habit. He's a little bitch is what I'm saying. This makes him completely unlikable, and in the world where... I can't do this. I can't keep looking through these episodes for clips to illustrate my point. It's so fucking boring. I got it. That's better. Now where was I? As the world is falling apart, Nick's more concerned with drugs than anything else. He is the first person I would feed to the zombie hordes if I were his mom, because that's the kind of person who will drag you down. And I suppose it's realistic that someone like that would continue to be stupid and selfish even in the face of the end of the world, and maybe this could have been a compelling character to have as a member of the B-cast. Someone who, not totally unlike Eugene, is practically useless, but in Nick's case has the additional vice of constantly putting himself first, while almost getting everyone around him killed over something stupid and selfish like a pack of cigarettes in a zombie's pocket. Maybe he'd let someone die so he can get some drugs, kind of like Shane did to Otis, but Shane did it to save Carl's life, so it was a little different. By the way, good job there, Shane. Definitely dodged a bullet on that one. My point is, having a heroin addict on the team could have been interesting just because it creates such a huge liability. Having to drag around someone so impulsive and selfish that the audience is meant to hate, only to have them die because they couldn't get their shit together, would be really satisfying and fun. Almost dry. Still enough time for season 2. It's only episode 2 of season 2, and Nick seems to be completely over his addiction, taking on more and more of a heroic role, which is kind of weird and not at all something you would expect from this character. Now that the big three are out of the way, let's talk about the angsty teenage girl. Her character is that she's angsty. Oh, and she had a boyfriend who drew on her once, but then he died. Next we have Travis's actual son, who is, guess what? An angsty teen. Yeah, you don't have expendable written all over you at all. You're a valuable member of the group. Look at you being so useful. If this kid manages to make it to episode 8, I will quit watching, assuming I even make it that far. Next we have Travis's ex-wife, who's from that Orange is the New Black show, and spoiler alert, she dies in the season 1 finale. But nobody cares because she was just as uninteresting and whiny as the rest of them. And then we have the family that Travis ran into at a barbershop. The girl flirts with the soldier so her dad could torture him because her mom is dying or something. Her mom literally does nothing but die. And the old dude, who has apparently seen some shit in his day, is still for some reason an idiot who does nothing for most of the season. And that's really the main problem. They picked the boringest group of people to follow through the start of the zombie apocalypse. They spent most of the outbreak hidden safely behind a locked military gate, which could have been interesting had the show decided to make some sort of statement about how our military would handle the situation. Maybe explore the question of whether it's better to be safe but a prisoner, or free but in constant danger. And if you wanted to demonize the government, you could show them mowing down a bunch of citizens who had stumbled upon the gates looking for sanctuary and were just trying to get in. They could have at least explored how people who live in gated communities would cope with the whole world falling apart and those gates getting locked. Apparently, according to Fear the Walking Dead, everyone would continue being obsessed with their own petty family bullshit drama, while the military goes on boring patrols and has some sort of really vague evil intentions that are never explained beyond maintaining general authoritarian control over a housing tract. Also, is anybody else bothered by the fact that the military had this shit under control and our cast of characters were totally safe until this dumbass decided to let the zombies out? Seriously, the city probably would have been bombed, but their little suburban military outpost would have been totally safe had they just not let the zombies out. Who knows, that housing tract could have been the ground floor for the rebuilding effort. At the very least, it could have been the first Woodbury or Alexandria. Instead, everybody freaked out and now this shit is unable to be unfucked. Seriously, these are our heroes? These are the people we're supposed to be rooting for? I guess this sort of caught off guard panic mindset would be okay for the first few episodes, but we know anyone this indecisive doesn't last long in this universe, so it quickly becomes frustrating that they're still alive. Rick would not want these people as part of his group. Nobody wants to watch a bunch of upper middle class suburbanites with comfy lives and perfect lawns fail upward through the zombie apocalypse. Now I will say they did have a few episodes in season 1 where the show seemed to be stepping up its game. They weren't great, but they were better, mainly because stuff happened. And because the show seemed to be figuring out how to make the episodes better, I had some small glimmer of hope that they had learned from the mistakes of the first season and would revamp the show for season 2. I really did want this show to get better, but it actually somehow got worse. Instead of a cul-de-sac, our survivors are now stuck in a tiny boat. Angsty teen number 2 is even more angsty because his mom died, while angsty teen number 1 is too busy flirting with a stranger on the radio to do anything interesting. Seriously, why would you tell random strangers where you are over an unsecured radio broadcast? What a fucking stupid idiot. Travis and Blondie are just as useless as ever, and poor man's Johnny Depp here is suddenly some kind of wannabe superhero. First he saves the family by giving them a ride on the speedboat, and then he jumps into the middle of the fucking ocean to save angsty teen number 1. I guess you can't spell heroin without hero. You didn't need the drugs, Nick. The hero was in you all along. The one character I kind of liked, and I use that term loosely, was Strand from season 1. He had an air of mystery about him, he was at the very least decisive, but now he's been reduced to just reminding people whose boat they're on.
It's my boat.
Whose boat?
It is my boat.
Oh, okay. Wait, whose boat are we on right now?
My goddamn boat.
The show at this point just feels like a giant missed opportunity. They should have given us characters who were stuck in the middle of the chaos throughout the entire beginning of the zombie apocalypse. That way we'd be following people who see, do, and experience things. And there was a sense of potential in the early episodes. Because Nick is a heroin addict, he ended up in the hospital, the one place you really fucking don't want to be when the zombie apocalypse breaks out. They spent so much time in this hospital, I thought for sure it would be the jumping off point for the series. The place where it all starts to fall apart, putting our heroes right in the thick of it. But nope. I mean, I thought the whole point of this new series was to explore the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, see the kind of stuff we missed out on in the original series, and watch the world fall apart. I was hoping we'd see some backstory into the lore and the world in general, and also see how America went from totally normal to a third world country in like the 2 months Rick was in a coma. Seriously, Rick's coma was probably more interesting than this. Instead, everything interesting happens outside the walls of their gated community as our characters bicker and argue and lay by the pool. He's literally relaxing in the pool during a zombie apocalypse. Way to ramp up the tension, AMC. And there's no reason for this show to be this bad or boring. They were given the perfect framework to hang a story upon and a fun universe to play around in. Not to mention a fantastic example of how to tell this sort of story in an interesting way. Remember the pilot of The Walking Dead? That felt like it could be a movie. It had a sense of scale and scope never before seen in a television series. This feels more like a soap opera. On the bright side, there's no way this mess gets picked up for a 3rd season. Son of a bitch! Of course, it's one thing to criticize and another to offer a solution, so if you'd like to hear how I would have handled Fear the Walking Dead, leave a comment down below. If there's enough interest, maybe I'll do a what if video. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I release new videos every week, and until next time, keep being awesome. Yeah, there's no way this lasts for a 3rd season.